Hello, you're very welcome to the second episode of our accounting series special. This week we wanted to take a different approach. So last week we had Kevin from MI Solutions. If you haven't listened to that one, jump back in. That's going to focus on Zero. This week we brought Sean in to talk about Sage. Next week we're going to go with Nikki Gorins-Larkin about QuickBooks. So the difference between Kevin and Nikki is they're coming from the accountancy practices view, experts working with many construction companies. And we thought what would be interesting to bring in from the Sage point of view was with Sean. With Sean, it comes from a very unique position. He spent many years, up to 15 years, working with DBAS, who he would have had that many construction companies experience. But now he sits in the chair as a CFO of a construction company. So he's bringing that sort of real day-to-day operational management of construction company finances into the equation too. So we thought that would be great to mix it up and have that experience as part of this series. So Sean shares some of the insights and some of the tips and what he's found working with Sage, in particular Sage 50, and it benefits and some of the pros, some of the cons with the product. So sit back, enjoy. I hope you get some value from my chat with Sean O'Reilly, CFO of McKeon Group. All right, that's it. We're up and running. Sean, you're very welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here.
Thanks for being here, Ciaran. Thanks for inviting me.
No, you're very welcome. Listen, we're building out this series of, trying to get some information out there about accounting products and accountants. And as we mentioned you've called it the waiting room. We've touched on Zero, and now we're moving on to Sage. Before I jump into your experience with Sage, I always like to sort of give people a bit of a background on the person and how you ended up with McKeon. So could you describe your background, how you became an accountant and how you ended up working with McKeon?
Yeah, I suppose I worked with DBAS, who are a medium-sized accountancy firm, for 15 years. So after I left college in Tallaght, I started with DBAS. I spent 15 years there working as an accountant, an auditor, tax and consultant. And in that time in DBAS, I spent a lot of time on software, and I was heavily involved in kind of helping clients with selecting accountancy software and installing it onto their systems. And with that, I done a lot of kind of forensics work. So I was always heavily involved in the software part of the business and extracting information from various different types of software. And, that's really what I did for 15 years before I came to McKeon Group. I left DBAS then in February 2020 to join McKeon Group. And then I was a month here and the world turned upside down. So it was quite an eventful first year in McKeon Group, as in it started in February and then COVID came in March. So that came with everything and all the challenges. But thankfully now we have hopefully going to see the back of that and onwards and upwards. So leaving all the COVID stuff aside, McKeon Group is also kind of a very different type of construction company, as in we have three divisions, and we have the construction, which is mainly in the commercial space. Then we have an M&E division, and we have a technology division, which is our HereWorks brand. So while we do a lot of construction, the technology side of things is quite interesting and quite different to most traditional construction companies. And, we've plenty of stuff going on with R&D, we've stuff going on with Enterprise Ireland. So yeah, exciting times ahead, Ciaran.
So before, it's interesting, and it was good to get you on, because you are in a unique position that you've spent many years working with lots of construction companies, and then you get convinced to move across to McKeon, and now you're heading up the financial side of McKeon and involved in implementation and rollouts of different software and stuff like that, and ERP and all that type of stuff. So you got a pretty hands-on experience with construction and accounts and everything that goes with it. 15 years you're working with DBAS, I've seen on your LinkedIn. I was having a little scout around there this morning. How have you found switching from working with, say, many construction companies into, say, just working for one? So that's like more of a personal point of view. How have you found that transition?
It was good. Like, I suppose when you're working for many construction companies, you never really get to concentrate on the day-to-day running and really deep diving into what makes a construction company successful, and really digging down into the likes of, it's all about cost management and people management, really. So that's the big change, is looking at every job on a job by job basis and really digging down into the margins and, having your ear to the ground about procurement and the price fluctuations and all the challenges that come with that. That's the biggest change, is the kind of, when you're in practice and you're looking at the top level, you're looking at the big picture all the time. But when you're hands-on day-to-day working for one company, you really have to get down into the detail of it. And that's where the likes of software really helps, and good software really helps.
In your DBAS days, because I mean DBAS, for those that don't know, you would have managed their accounting firm, would have managed a lot of construction clients. I mean, if you think back to them days, when a construction company came to you, how receptive would have been to say to you saying we're going to move over to an accounts package, something like Sage, for example?
To me, the decision about what account software most construction companies would use does heavily rely on what the accountant says. So the business owner would typically come to the accountant and ask, look, we want to get software. Which one would you recommend? So to me, the accountants are vital in making that recommendation. And in DBAS, we were always kind of a Sage house from the point of view, we're all heavily trained on it and we all like the software. So it made sense for us to recommend that software to our clients because we were experts at it, if that makes sense, Ciaran.
Yeah, it does.
It made their life easy and it made our life easy as well. But all that aside, to me, Sage, it really is the best in class system for that level of a construction company.
And I suppose the question would be then why? Why would you choose Sage then over others?
I choose Sage over others primarily because there's a lot of interactions or integration with the likes of Office 365. So the likes of what they do with Word and Excel in particular is very good. And I also like it's trained, so it's used in a lot of colleges, and the AITI, the Accountants Technicians of Ireland, they train college students in using Sage 50. So people coming out of college, landing in either accountancy practices or going into industry and landing in construction companies and any other company, they have a familiarity with Sage 50. So straight away, you're able to tap into when it comes to getting resources or getting bookkeepers, getting finance people, they already have a knowledge of Sage 50. And that's a big thing. Another thing that Sage do quite well is they are customized for the Irish setup, as in their support centers in Ireland, and they would have customized their VAT, their VAT system for Ireland, which a lot of others don't. Likes of Xero and QuickBooks, Ireland is kind of like an afterthought to me for them companies. They're geared up looking at the UK market, and then there's no real customization for an Irish customer, in my opinion.
Yeah, I suppose it was a question on that, just to dig into that. So how user friendly then would Sage be for, say, the construction guy? So you're coming at it from an accounting point of view, and you're saying, okay, love the system, makes sense to me. I've probably been trained on it. It's all I really know. So therefore, I'm definitely going to recommend it. But I suppose from the client's point of view that's coming to you, how user friendly do you think Sage is, or how quickly do construction clients pick it up, I suppose, would be another question.
Yeah, it depends, Ciaran, what side you're coming at the system, as you said. Like if you're the business owner, how much are you going to use the finance system of Sage? So you're not going to really get involved in the bank side of things. You're going to look at the reporting side of things. So you're going to want to look at the P&Ls or running a trade creditors listing or a trade debtors listing. Who owes me money? And to me, it is very easy to find that information in Sage. And you can also kind of customize the user access level. So if I wanted someone is going to do debt collection or credit control, I would only give them access to the debtor side of things. So they're not going to get confused or even distracted by the other parts of the system. So that user control also makes it very easy for non-finance people to find a way around the system.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that pops up as well with Sage is, I mean, traditionally speaking, Sage is a on-premise. So obviously we've got the other products now that are popping up with Sage Business Cloud, but I mean, Sage 50, traditionally speaking, on-premise solution. Question then would be straight away, well, I mean, what are some of the benefits of cloud, and is the fact that it's on-premise a problem?
On-premise is a problem, and that would be one of the biggest downsides to Sage 50 back 15 years ago when I started. And even now, like Sage 50 say they have a cloud version, but it's really what I would call a hybrid model. It's, your data is hosted on the cloud, but you still have to install the software on your device, so on your laptop, or if you're in an office environment, on various PCs. And that has its own problem, Ciaran, as you know, like, it's just configuration issues. And a Windows update could come out tomorrow, and all of a sudden it's not really sitting right with Sage. And that is the biggest weakness when it comes to that on-prem part, and the fact that it's not fully cloud-based.
Oh, fair enough. Some of the, like you touched on a couple of add-ons there with Office 365 and Word and Excel. Have you come across any other add-ons that Sage offer that would be beneficial to construction?
Well, look, I know we're on a live cost thing, but the biggest add-on that's out there, Ciaran, is live cost, really, that I see that really benefits construction companies. There is the other things like, the online bank reconciliation, I think it's Udel or something they use. But when it comes to construction only, I haven't found anything better than live cost as a bolt into Sage 50. And it's at what you asked me to start about, the difference between working on numerous construction companies and working on one construction company. It's getting that understanding of it day by day, job by job. That level of detail is that's what the big guys, that's how you're going to know if you're making money. That's how you know what price increase are coming at us now. Do you know that kind of way? And handling the PO system, allocating of labor against jobs, that's what live cost does. And to me, it is really the best thing out there for the minute as an add-in.
Thanks, Sean. I'll drop you out that few bob down.
Oh, it's easy to say here. Like, I can't think of anything that's done it. And like in my 15 years working on Sage, before live cost, I spent a lot of time customizing Sage 50 for construction guys, where you were using the likes of the departmental analysis, the nominal ledger within Sage. You could customize it so you could set up numerous sales nominals, numerous cost centers, numerous departments. So every time you had a new site, to keep it down easy, you'd have a new department, and then you'd code the invoice against that department. So we spent a lot of time customizing Sage 50 so it could get a site-by-site, job-by-job reporting out the back of it. But like what live cost is doing, it just blows all that away. Like, you know what I mean? You don't even get involved. You set Sage 50 out of the box and you let live cost do the project management piece. And the allocation of labor, just to say it, like, when you can put your labor cost against the job the way live cost does, like, that's what makes a difference. The amount of manual journals and checking that you have to do to make sure that's right, without it, it's a full-time job.
Appreciate that. Yeah, we definitely don't want to make it the
live cost
live cost show. But listen, but like on Sage, first of all, I appreciate that. Second of all, on Sage, and what we're trying to really frame up is, people come to us all the time and say, what accounting software do you recommend? And when I say people, these are customers. They're customers of live cost that would come to us regularly and say, we're using live cost, but what accounting software do you recommend? And we're just not best positioned to comment on that. I mean, we come from the trade, so I mean, who are we to start commenting on people's accounting system? So, we always say, go and speak to an expert, go and speak to an accounts expert. And, if we integrate it or we can integrate it, we certainly will. And Sage is definitely one of those that people have asked us, you need to integrate with this. So that's where all that would have came from. Like you touched on support there, and support being in Ireland, which is used. And we would have people listen to this in the UK as well. And obviously Sage are very, very dominant in the UK too. How does this customer support then compare from Sage to, say, other softwares that you would have used through the years?
First of all, I find the fact that like the Sage support is in Dublin here in Ireland, and it's in Newcastle, as far as I know, in the UK, is their main support center. And the likes of Xero and QuickBooks, now I stand to be corrected, and I don't really know what they're like in the UK, but I've never, particularly in Xero, it's all online, it's all chat based. And to me, it's very hard if I have a question as an accountant and that level of a user, I'm not looking for the basic answer. I've obviously troubleshooted and done a few things myself. So you need to talk to someone. And I always found it very hard to get through, to talk to a human being for the likes of Xero and QuickBooks. And Sage are always there on the phone. And again, now that is a bit double-edged, because Sage are very clever that they have an accountant hotline, I would call it. So if you're an accountant in practice, you can call a Sage support line that is based for accountants. So that's very clever from Sage, because again, I'm going in there, they know it's an accountant that's ringing. So it's not going to be the basic type of question. They have particular support staff built around that. So that makes my journey very good with Sage, and my experience of Sage support very good.
With the Xero, I know Xero lean heavily on their partner program. I mean, that's one thing they do. They really rely heavily. But if you're a customer that comes via online and doesn't go through a partner program, you're going to end up in that position. But I mean, they do rely, and it's probably the reason why they're able to scale so quickly, is that they don't need to have this support on the ground in every location. They just rely on them. On them partners. That's similar to QuickBooks in fairness.
And it's very funny you say it, because in DBAS as well, like if I recommended Sage to a client or to one of my bookkeepers or one of my accountants that were working for one of my companies, they would ring me first. And that was always a bone of contention with Sage, that we as the accountants in practice were actually supporting Sage 50, if that makes sense. So they wouldn't ring Sage, they'd ring the accountant. So we'd all have to be product experts on it, because we would end up doing the Sage support piece rather than Sage direct, if that makes sense. So that's very like what Xero obviously do, that you're going, if you have a problem, if I've recommended Xero to a client, and I have done in the past for different things, like Xero suits different types of businesses. If you're in a kind of a wholesale or kind of a retail sector, Xero has a lot more nice plugins that work for that environment, from stock control, from an EPOS system. And again, the client will bring Sean looking for that Xero support. And then, I may have to ring Xero if it's something a little bit advanced. So that's where the pain would be for me, that I wouldn't be able to get access to Xero so quickly, whereas I would be able to get access to Sage.
It's a great point, because we had Kevin Smith on last week, and Kevin he's from MI Solutions, and Kevin's preference, although he works with a lot of Sage clients, his preference would be Xero. And one of the points Kevin made, which is exactly the point that you're making here, is that like there's no one size fits all. It's what's the business case, what's the different dynamics going through the business. And it might not be that there's one accounting software that we can recommend for all businesses. It's just got to be different sets of circumstances. Maybe it is Xero in certain circumstances, maybe it is Sage in others. So I think it's a fair point. We all have our shortcomings. From your experience working with Sage, what are some, you've touched on one being the on-prem issue, like anything else that pops to mind that you think?
The one thing that I am aware of in the industry out there is Sage, to me, the back end is very hard to integrate to. So the likes of APIs and, some of these updates that release, because it comes back to not being fully cloud-based, to be honest with you, and having this kind of on-prem hybrid approach. Like the Windows update changes overnight, which Microsoft do regularly, like that could have an impact on your environment for Sage that Sage is installed in. So it can be a bit of a nightmare for IT staff at times. And again, in all these kind of small SMEs, like who has an IT department these days, and that is the biggest drawback, that a Windows update could change something within Sage that affects Sage, I should say. But it could also affect your third-party plugin. So, like if LiveCost is plugged in, that can be an issue. You might have a CRM system plugged into it, and this little tweak from Windows, all of a sudden, that's not working. I know other companies that have a manufacturing module or software that's built into the back end of Sage, and one little change from a Sage update or a Microsoft update, and all of a sudden, your manufacturing system isn't talking to your Sage account system.
Yeah.
It's a major problem. It's that back end would be, I see, the biggest problem.
Yeah, and that's where I think that's where it comes down to affordability as well. So like some companies have resources to go and plug in full cloud-based ERP process, top to bottom, automated and cloud-based, and other companies don't. And that's where they need to sort of improvise with, okay, a bit of this and a bit of that, and plug this one in and move it across there, and then we have it, and we have it at a cost-effective way, and we can see all the data, and we're operating effectively. If you're like, if I'm a construction company today, Sean, and I'm coming to you, what are you recommending me?
I am still going to recommend Sage 50. Now it does, Ciaran, it depends what size construction company you are. The kind of way, like for us, McKeon Group, we couldn't operate on Sage 50, and even, looking at, we need a kind of advanced procurement system, control the purchase orders, and we want it fully integrated with or what we're doing the R&D side and different things, but for a normal SME type construction company, all day long, I would still recommend Sage 50.
Good stuff. Sean, listen, you've been very good and very kind with your time. Do appreciate you coming on. And if anyone wants to learn more about McKeon Group or HereWorks, where could they find you guys?
Yeah, well, a Google search will find us, but if anyone wants to reach out to me directly, my email address is sean.o'reilly@mckeon.ie. I'm glad to talk and always happy to help, Ciaran, anytime.
Fair play. What we'll do, we'll link that up anyway in the show notes, and we'll make sure your contact details and the websites are ready available there for anyone that wants to go and check you out. HereWorks in particular is very interesting because that structure in McKeon is unique. It's probably something we didn't touch on. Traditional construction company, technology company. We could probably get you back on another day to actually talk about that particular story. Because it's an interesting, a really interesting sort of dynamic. How a tech company spins out of a construction company. But we won't go there today. Listen, Sean, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Ciaran. Take care. Bye bye.